Greetings, everyone. Thank you for being a continued support of the podcast. This is the first episode for the year 2024. The podcast will have some new things that will be introduced this year, which will be coming soon. Once again, thank you for your continued support. Greetings, listeners. Welcome to Consulting Between Friends. I am your host, Michael Holmes Jr. The story of life has a beginning and ending for everyone, and the story can have tribulations and accomplishments. History is defined as the chronological record of events and human affairs. The history that we will focus on is Black history. Black history is a part of American history more than most people think. Black history tells the stories of African Americans from the past to present. There was a time when their culture wasn't appreciated. However, now Black culture is the forefront of many avenues in American life. We love to watch movies. Movies shows us different realities, some real and some fantasy. Movies allows people to tell stories about different events in people's lives. There are some well-known Black history movies and some that hasn't received the same praise. These stories needs to have the same attention as the popular ones. This episode will focus on some of the least known Black history movies that are about monumental moments in Black history. The topic is historical Black movies and accomplishments, part 1. We will return after a message from our sponsor. Everyone is always planning things, and advertising is needed to make it happen. So, if it's personal or business, let Pinpoint Designs and Images solve that problem. With Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC, you will receive quality work and professional service at a great price. The service that is offered: flyers, business cards, programs, invitations, photo books, ad booklets, and much more. Michael Holmes Jr., owner/principal designer of Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC. Contact me by email or social media. Email address is pinpointdesignsandImages@gmail.com, and Instagram Pinpoint Designs, and Facebook Pinpoint Designs and Images. We are back. When people think about Black history, they automatically think about the great people such as Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and many others. The people who paved the way in history for everyone needs to be recognized. The current generation only knows a little about their history since things are being changed in the education curriculum. In other words, the history of the past is being challenged more about what should be taught in schools. Some individuals are trying to cover up the past and change people's perspectives about their history. This perspective has opened doors that can't be closed. After a short break, we will return. We are back. Now, a list of Black History movies. List 1. Selma, release 2014. Description: Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. marched from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery, Alabama in 1965 for voting rights. Malcolm X, release 1992. Description: The story about Malcolm X's life and the iconic civil rights leader. Four Little Girls, release 1997. Description: 1963 Birmingham church bombing that killed four little girls during the civil rights movement. Freedom Riders, release 2010. The 400 black and white Americans risked their lives on a bus and trains. One of the bus caught on fire by the protesters. Boycott, release 2001. Description: Boycott the public buses during the 1950s civil rights movement. Till, release 2022. In the 1955, after Emmett Till was murdered in a brutal lynching. Women of the Movement, release 2022. In 1955, after the Emmett Till murder in the brutal lynching. This story is how his mother fight for justice for her son, brutal, hurtful death. Ghosts of Mississippi, release 1996. The 1996 murder of civil rights leader Medgar Evers and how his wife got justice in the murder trial. The Tuskegee Airmen, release 1995. The story of the first African American U.S. flights group in World War II. Red Tails, release 2012. A crew of African American pilots in the Tuskegee training program during World War II. Marshall, release 2017. The story of Thurgood Marshall, the first African American Supreme Court justice. Gifted Hands, the Ben Carson story. Release 2009. The story of Ben Carson, a world's famous neurosurgeon at Johns Hopkins. Something the Lord Made. Release 2004. A heart surgeon pioneer, Alfred Blalock and Vincent Thomas. Vincent Thomas in 1985 was presented the degree of honor Doctor of Law by Johns Hopkins University in 1976. Mrs. Evers' Boys, release 1997. The true story of the U.S. government 1932 Tuskegee syphilis experiment, in which a group of black test subjects were allowed to die. Introducing Dorothy Danges. Release 1999. The story of Dorothy Danges as a dancer, singer, and actress. The United States versus Billie Holiday. 2021. The story of Billie Holiday, how the Federal Department of Narcotics investigated her career as a legendary jazz singer. Betsy. 2015. The story of the legendary blues performer Bessie Smith, who rose to fame during the 1920s and the 30s. Self made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker. Release 2020. The inspiring story, trailblazer African American entrepreneur Madam C.J. Walker, who built the hair care empire that made her America's first female self made millionaire. Loving. Release 2016. The story of Richard and Mildred Loving, a couple who arrested for interracial marriage in the 1960s. The autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. Release 1974. The story of a black woman in the South who was born into slavery in the 1850s and lives to be a part of the civil rights movement in 1960s. The Immoral Life of Henrietta Lacks. Release 2017. An African American woman became an unwilling pioneer for medical breakthrough when her cells are used to create the first immoral human cell line in the early 1950s. This list of Black History movies will have a link in the podcast notes. After a short break, we will return. We are back. In closing, I hope the information was valuable to my listeners. I wanted to highlight Black history moments that get overlooked. Black people has some remarkable achievements that everyone should know. So I hope all my listeners appreciate the material I provided. One last thing, remember to support local businesses and let your mind write the story of your life. Thank you for listening to Consulting Between Friends. This podcast is available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts, as well other platforms that are available. So like and subscribe. Need to contact us and leave us a comment? You can find us on Instagram at consulting, the letter B, friends. Once again, consulting B, friends. An email address is consulting, the letter B, friends at gmail.com. Once again, consulting B, friends at gmail.com. Consulting Between Friends now has a merch online store called Podcast Merch Headquarters. This is where you can buy merch to show your support for the podcast. Some items to choose from are t shirts, tumblers, and hoodies, as well many other things I know you will appreciate. So take the time to review the items in the store. The link will be available in the podcast notes under Podcast Merch Headquarters. Thanks again for the support. If you have an extra minute, it would be greatly appreciated if you could answer a few questions regarding the quality of the podcast. The link will be in the description. Consulting Between Friends. Thanks to everyone for making this possible. The host, Michael Holmes Jr., the producer and content creator, Michael Holmes Jr., the artwork cover, Michael Holmes Jr., original music, a DJ name / content distributor, My Producer Podcasts.